So you finished writing your very first book, but now where should you publish it? There's lots of options with self-publishing, and you're going to want to stick around because I'm going to tell you the pros and cons associated with them. This is Chris Baird from selfpublishingmadeeasynow.com, where self-publishing doesn't have to be so hard. So in today's video, we're going to look at the 3 different types of publishing with pros and cons 2023. So let's get right on into it. So what are the different types of publishing? Not self-publishing, but publishing. And the 3 big ones, the first one, of course, is self-publishing. And that's where the author's taking responsibility for the publishing of their own work. And you're going to be taking your book and going through all the processes yourself. You're not necessarily doing everything, but you're going to have to, if you're going to have other people do those things, well, then you're going to have to find those people, figure out how much you can pay them, all of these sorts of things. The second thing is hybrid publishing. And that would be where you're going to pay somebody to upfront to do your book. However, they're going to figure out who all the people are going to do it. You're going to lose a little bit of the flexibility there, and they may even want to do royalty sharing depending upon your book. So it can get a little bit sticky, but we're going to get into that in depth. The third option is traditional publishing, and that's the one that most people think about when you think about publishing a book. It's where they're going to give you a bonus upfront, and then they're going to help market your book. They're going to run it through a whole series of editing and finding the right cover and all sorts of stuff in order to get your book onto the market and possibly in major bookstores depending upon the offer or the deal that you have. Now you'll be making a little bit lower royalties, but at the same time it's a little bit more respectable from a lot of people's standpoint when it comes to publishing of your book. But let's do a deep dive into each of these. So the first one is self-publishing. Now, of course, that's the one I recommend for everyone, whether you're in my one-on-one program or you're in my group coaching, and we're going through exactly these very steps. So what are the advantages of self-publishing? Well, the first is that you have complete creative control, meaning you're not dependent upon anyone telling you, oh, you need to do this or you need to do that. You can do whatever you want. As long as it's within the realms of what is allowed on Amazon and these other platforms, you're free to make the book look and feel exactly as you like. Now that can be a good thing and that can also be a bad thing, but I really like it. It gives you complete flexibility. And some of the major publishing houses, they will make choices that are not necessarily the best choices for your book in order to get sales. The second thing is you're going to have the highest royalties possible. That means to say that when you put your book out there under your own account on Amazon KDP, for example, you're going to be making that 70% royalty on the ebooks that you're selling, which is phenomenal, or 40 to 60% on your paperbacks, depending upon your pricing on those paperbacks. But the royalties are a lot higher, which means more money in your pocket for the work you just did in the first part with that creative control that you have over your book. The next thing is that you're going to have faster publication. You could literally write the book and within 24 hours you could have it posted, and maybe within 48 have it go live on Amazon. It can go that fast. In fact, I have tested to see how quickly you can go through the different phases of your book project, and with self-publishing it is by far the quickest way that you can possibly go. So what are the disadvantages of self-publishing? There's a couple of things. One is the higher upfront cost. Nobody's giving you an advance, and you're going to have to pay this money out to the people who are going to be doing the covers, your editing, the formatting, all of these things that you may wish to do it. Now obviously something like formatting, you don't have to do it this way, but you can learn the steps yourself. Like I have below in the description, you can see my formatting course where we go through those exact steps so that you don't have to pay somebody over and over and over again. But there's still an upfront cost because you're going to need to learn how to use my favorite tool, which is Juto, for doing the formatting. So as you're working through it. The second thing is you're going to have limited distribution and marketing if you're going with a self-publishing. So in other words, it's all dependent upon how much you're willing to do. So there's a lot of learning that's going to go on, as opposed to the other options where it's going to be a little bit more automatic. They're just going to be running it through their system. You don't have to think about it, and you can focus on just the writing portion. And the last one here for the negatives, it's that there's a stigma and credibility issue that you may have. Some people think self-publishing, well, that anybody can self-publish a book. The reality is anybody cannot self-publish a book. In fact, a vast majority of people, they would like to publish a book, but they never get one on the market because the steps just get too confusing. And that's one of the things I like to do with my clients, is we go step by step. If you go step by step, you do not give up, we will get that book on the market, and we're going to be able to get that thing as optimized as possible. That doesn't mean you're going to sell 1 million copies of your book, but it does mean that it'll be the best version of the book that you're capable of doing. And when you come out with your second book, it will be even better. And we'll show you exactly how to do that. But that's one of the things. You may lose credibility, but you can make a lot more money. And that's why self-publishing is by far the correct route to go for almost any author. It's dependent. Unless you already are a famous person, then perhaps traditional is a better way. But even the self-publishing is a great way to start, and then you can transition later to doing one of the other options if that's better. Now, the hybrid publishing option can be a tricky. Sometimes people would even look at it as the vanity publisher, even though that can be sort of a negative, derogatory way of talking about it. So what are the advantages of hybrid publishing? The first one is access to professional services. Now, unlike self-publishing, you don't have to figure this all out. They've got a machine. They know exactly what has to be done with your book. They're just going to take it right through the whole meat grinder, pump out the book, get it in the right format, and there it is. It's ready to go. In fact, they may even post the thing directly onto the website under their own account, so you don't even have to set up an account, which we're going to get to that in the disadvantages. The second point of the advantages is that they have shared financial risk. So depending upon the model you're going with, they may choose royalty sharing with you. So then you're not having to put up all this money in advance. So if they're doing that, they own part of that book, right? It'll be under their account. They maybe get 50% of the royalties if they believe that's going to be profitable for them. And so in this sense, you're not having to put up as much money, but you know it's a hybrid because you have to pay at all. The third advantage is improved distribution and credibility. Some of these companies sound very professional. They look a lot more professional. They have their little, their imprint looks really professional. They've put out hundreds or thousands and thousands of books through their specific imprint, okay? And their distribution is fantastic as well. So they have a large distribution. They understand how exactly to play the game. You yourself also, by the way, of course, can find that distribution channels and the marketing channels and all of that yourself, but it's just a lot more work as opposed to you can pay them, to do this for you. But that is moving into the next section, which is the disadvantages of hybrid publishing. So the first thing is the higher costs. You don't get all of this for free. They're going to need their compensation, and these books can cost $1,000 to $10,000 to get onto the market if you're going this particular route. You're going to have to pay so that they can then hire these people, the professionals, in order to put the whole book together. The positive side is, well, you're not doing any of that work. The downside is it's going to cost you a lot more money than it would if you were doing the self-publishing route, which is what I recommend. The second point is that you have limited control. They know exactly how this book needs to look and feel in order to get through their system, and they're just going to do that. If you want to have more control, they're going to demand that you pay them $100 or another $1,000, right? Does that make sense? So as you're moving through the phases, if you want any changes, you're going to end up paying another $100 a change. So it can get quite expensive if you choose to go that route. And the third disadvantage is that you have an unclear royalty structure. Sometimes it's not quite clear who owns what and who gets which royalties. Is it under their account? So you don't even get to see whether sales are being made. And then they can charge you for the management of your book to inform you whether you made sales. And based on the sales, they will take their portion and then just inform you. So what if they don't tell you what you actually sold? Well, the answer is they can keep it because it's under their account. And you can say, but I own the rights to the book. Yes, but the royalties that you're getting off of the book can be split with them, and so this becomes a lot trickier. And so if you want to free your book at some time, for some people they find that to be difficult to try to buy the rights to their book back, even though they already own the rights, but to take them down on the one platform. Because keep in mind, they're interested in just the next person to put a book out. And for this type of publisher, for hybrid publishing, I would highly recommend you find even one author that you know, or you can find them on the net, who can vouch for the fact they've done more than one book. This is just a little bit of a warning. Make sure they've done 2 books, not 1, 2, because I've met a lot of people in the middle of the process with a hybrid publisher who are very happy, everything's going so smooth because they're still paying money and they're getting that. But when they get to the end of the process, they want to change stuff, and they discover that's when all these additional costs start coming in, and then their book's not selling anything, and they want to sell them for a $1,000, $2,000 marketing package for which maybe it sells, but it doesn't usually make the money back. And then what are you going to do? You're like not really left with a great feeling in your stomach, and then you're going to do your next book with them, and the answer is not usually. And that's why I'm telling you, do not even think about going with any one of these until you have met somebody who's done 2 books through them and was really happy with both books. Once you found those people, you know you found a great hybrid publisher. If you can't find those people, that is a red flag, because where are all the enthusiastic people about this hybrid publisher? That's just a general rule of thumb that I give all of my clients. And I have many clients who have gone through the hybrid publishers and then realized they thought, oh, look, my book got selected, and then they find out later that everybody is selected. So it can be a little bit of a downer when you make this huge discovery. So traditional publishing, there's our second big one we're looking at. Now, on traditional publishing, you have the 5 big publishing houses, okay? This is going to be Penguin Random House. You're going to have your Hachette Book Group, HarperCollins, Macmillan Publishers, and Simon & Schuster. Now, these are the really big powerhouses. These are names that everybody recognizes in the business. These are the huge ones, and if you get your books published in one of these, that can say a lot of positive things for you. But let's get on to it. What are the other major book publishers? These ones can include lesser-known names like Scholastic Corporation, Bloomsbury Publishing, Pearson Education, Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, Penguin Books, W.W. Norton and Company, Elsevier, Springer Science Business Media, and Taylor and Francis Group. So those are just a couple of the other ones there. And then finally, to end it up, we have the mid-level book publishers like Source Books, which is like an independent publisher based in Illinois, specializing in publishing fiction, nonfiction, and children's books. So for example, so you have these mid-level book publishers, or Entangled Publishing, which does romance and young adults, right? Or Gayward Press, a library press based in Minnesota that publishes poetry, fiction, and nonfiction books. And they have a lot of literary awards and things like that that will go with them as well. So it's not just like there's only the big 5. Sometimes you can get a little bit confused and thinking, oh, there's only these major publishing houses. No, there are other ones. But the way you know you're working with a traditional publisher is that you don't really do any of the work and you're not paying any money up front. If you're paying money up front, it's a hybrid publisher. Okay, so it's just that easy. Or you're doing self-publishing where you're taking all the costs yourself right up front in exchange for the higher royalties. So let's look at the advantages of traditional publishing. So the first is credibility and prestige. So traditional publishing, it's still viewed as absolutely the most prestigious. We were talking about that before. And the fact is that when you go through one of these houses, people are like, wow, you're going to publish through this house. The reality, though, is even your self-published books are going to get a decent level of respect. Like, oh, I can't believe you published a book. It's for most people, they still have never done it. And so it's a really big deal. And there's a lot of steps involved. And that's one of the reasons why it's very impressive, especially if you get chosen by one of the big houses. But I wouldn't suggest waiting forever, because you can literally spend years and years and just throw your manuscript away. Whereas you could have made thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars off of your books if you had just self-published them. And that's one of the reasons I highly recommend going that route. And it's really not that difficult, but you can just grab my checklist below in the description if you want to learn more about the easy steps to getting your book self-published and selling. The second advantage is a wider distribution. Traditional publishers, they have established this huge network, so they're able to really get the book spread out, including getting into major bookstores and stuff, which can make you quite happy, when you see your book there, but that doesn't make it sell. That's where the challenge comes in for a lot of authors. There's this assumption that if one of the major publishing houses publishes your book, then the book will sell. In reality, it's sort of a guess from their standpoint, like Random House saying it was like random which books would sell, which books wouldn't sell. And they're not going to use a lot of time on a book if it doesn't sell immediately. They just bury the book and move on to the next one. And now where are you left at as an indie author, or as a you're traditionally published author, but what good did it do you if your book's not selling anything? And the third one is marketing and publicity support. They are experts on this if they choose to use their resources. If you're a major author, then of course they're going to use a lot of resources on you. But if you are not, they're going to use very limited. It's up to you still. Some authors have this idea that if you go traditionally published, that they're going to market your books for you so you don't have to do that. You are completely mistaken. And in fact, if you don't market your books, it's not going to make sales, which is going to tell them this was a bad choice to even choose your book in the first place, and that will be the last book you're going to do with them. In fact, you may evaluate whether you really want to do it again anyways, because you really aren't going to get your money's worth, and you're not building up the same audience, and you're not learning all of the skills that are necessary like you would learn if you were going the self-publishing route. So, disadvantages of traditional publishing. The first is a lack of creative control. You lose all of the control. They're going to virtually to do anything they want to do with your book, and they won't publish it if you don't agree to everything. So, unless you're a famous author, if they say they want this title or they want this cover, they're going to force that on you. So, you're just going to have to go with it. If their editors say change these things, those things need to be changed. Otherwise, they're not going to publish your book, which means you have literally no control. You had the control up to the moment you finished writing the manuscript, you send it to them, and at that point, they're going to do whatever they want with your book. Now, if that's not a problem for you, well, that might be just fine then. The second disadvantage is long publishing process. This thing can take 12 to 18 months, even longer, to get your book on the market compared to self-publishing, where we're talking less than a week, usually a couple days, once you get the flow down, okay? Whereas for them, it could take 12 to 18 months, and sometimes they may even sit on the project and decide not to release it, which is another huge disadvantage if you chose to go this way. And keep in mind, you've already had to wait to even get selected to be chosen for a traditional publishing house in the first place. So where does that exactly leave you? Well, it leaves you quite disappointed. That's why a lot of people I know who did get traditionally published, they were not happy with the end results. They might do it once just so they could say they were traditionally published and not just an indie author, but at the same time, they lose money on this transaction. So usually they aren't looking to do it a bunch of times. Unless their book's already making tons of sales, the traditional publisher is not interested either in doing more of your books that are not going to make them money. And the final one for the disadvantages, it is the lower royalties. Some of them are as low as 12%, really low compared to that 70% we were seeing if you're self-publishing, which again is a reason why self-publishing is definitely the way to go. I would not recommend doing traditional publishing until you are a successful self-publisher. Then you have an audience, you can prove your books are going to sell, and you'll get better rates and terms from the traditional publishing house. You're not completely subject to just say yes and feel like, oh, I'm so glad they chose me. And then you literally are taking breadcrumbs from them. Even if your book does start to sell, the average book that they sell, they don't sell that many copies. And so it's a really tough one. So in conclusion, you have your self-publishing, you have your hybrid publishing, and you have your traditional publishing. Of these, I definitely recommend you go for self-publishing. It's by far the best option for almost all authors because you're going to really want to learn this stuff. Unless you're sitting on millions and millions of dollars and don't care about sales, then perhaps hybrid or traditional publishing may be a better choice for you. But otherwise, you're definitely going to want to go with self-publishing. And how exactly you're going to do that? You're going to look below in the description, and you're going to grab a copy of my self-publishing checklist to help you self-publish your book and get it selling. And also check above me here for more video answers to your self-publishing questions. Thanks.